One late afternoon in late autumn, Driftwood Beach on Jekyll Island was wonderfully dramatic. Beneath marbled blue sky and puffy clouds, a cool wind tousled my hair and plucked at my long pants, flannel shirt, and jacket. This wasn't summertime beach attire, but it was perfect for a stroll along the shoreline where sanderlings skittered and pounding surf rolled sea foam. On November 25th, my family and I visited Driftwood Beach. I've lived in Georgia for 45 years but hadn't heard of this place until last weekend. My oldest son John was the instigator. He had scouted the beach 2 weeks earlier during a business trip and knew of a certain photo opportunity at high tide. After 2 days of games and Thanksgiving dining, everyone wanted to go for a walk, so we joined him. Driftwood Beach is a popular photography destination because of its dead live oak trees. In recent decades, changing currents allowed the salty Atlantic Ocean water to gradually encroach on a section of the island's maritime forest. Now the skeletal forms of dozens of live oaks rest on the beach, some on the sand, some near the waterline, and some in the ocean. When we arrived at the beach, the contorted live oak carcasses immediately got our attention. But John had something else in mind. He focused more intimately on an area where surf, rock, and wood come together in ways that might elude the notice of most visitors. From past experience, I've noticed that John seems to have an eye for places where water and rock come together in ways suited to long exposure photography. I knew this because something similar had happened a month before, about as far from Jekyll Island as you can get in Georgia. While walking the Jacks River Trail in the Cohutta Wilderness in the Georgia mountains in October, John noticed a shallow channel cutting through a rocky islet. I had walked right by without paying attention. He spent a half hour working on long exposure shots while I looked on. Similarly, it was rocks and water that prodded him to complete this little mountains and sea bookend photography project. When we arrived at Driftwood Beach at 2:30 p.m. the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the incoming tide was still too far out for what he wanted, so all of us scattered along the beach, focusing on trees in and near the waterline or whatever else caught our eye. There were so many interesting things to work with. My daughter Laura Ann, her husband Bryce, and my wife Lisa used their excellent phone cameras to capture many interesting pictures, mostly of sand and sea and surf and driftwood live oaks. I admire how their cameras handled the partly cloudy sky. My Nikon didn't do as well, undoubtedly evidence of the skill of the user rather than the quality of the camera. For half an hour, John worked to get a long exposure shot of waves splashing across a tree trunk in the surf. I took short exposure shots that lacked the drama of sheeting water. John didn't show me any of the photos he took, so perhaps he wasn't pleased with those. At one point, I remembered that I had taken a picture of Laura Ann on the beach on nearby St. Simon's Island in November 2000 when she was 8 years old. She remembered too and recreated her childhood pose from memory. For many of my photos, I tried to avoid people within the frame, but occasionally they added flair to a picture, as with this shot of Laura Ann walking in the distance, of a boy balanced on a live oak carcass, the hands of my son Jackson on an old oak spiderweb root system, and family photos like this one of my daughter-in-law Cameron and grandson William, and this one of the younger members of the family. John too focused mostly on nature shots, but here he found reason to include a person walking on the beach to add contrast and complete the composition for this shot. In addition to sweeping views, John and Lisa took more intimate photos of interesting wood grain and of wood and rock patterns. When the tide had come in far enough, John began working the angle he really wanted, the rip-rap rocks, a dead tree, and the surf. He took a variety of photos, including color, black and white, close in, and more distant. He found it most effective to wait for the incoming water and a wave to stop. Then he snapped the shutter release button for 1.5-second exposures. The receding skim of water added a smooth and effective sheeting effect on the sand. When we were done, we left the beach and walked back to our car. On the way, we passed this stretch of marsh that glowed under the setting sun. We took our final pictures of the day here. John was right. Driftwood Beach is worth visiting. Thank you for watching this Georgia Backroads program.